Mayday.
Oh my God.
Get ready.
Okay, so you know how it works. The drill is very simple. Recently got engaged, right? And with that comes two things: a lot of reading, a lot of spending, because you have to spend a lot of money getting ready for this wedding. But with the reading, I've started to investigate like long-term relationships. How do we make them work? I mean, you're going into a heavy commitment. And part of the statistics that I came across were really depressing, to be honest with you. And it was around sort of this romantic energy or erotic energy, to be more specific. And it was that, hold on for 2 seconds. Sorry, I got distracted. So some of you might know that I recently got engaged, and a lot happens when you get engaged. One, you start spending a whole lot of money, right? I think we all know how that works out. And two, you start doing a lot of reading. And the reading I've been doing is mostly research about how I can make this long-term commitment work. How do I contribute to making sure that it stays healthy, stays happy, and it lasts for a lifetime, till death do us part. But the reality is, as you go through that process, you start to find out the dark side as well, that things don't always go as well. We all know the divorce rate is very high, but what we don't talk enough about is the fact that there are people who stay in relationships that unfortunately have a lot missing. So a lot of their needs are not being met. And today I thought we'd talk about a specific one, which is around erotic energy, relationships that are living, or people who are living through relationships that are missing that part, that are running low on the erotic energy. My question is simply this: why does it happen? And how do we stop it from happening? And if it's already gone down that road, how do you pull it back? Because I suspect you wouldn't want to stay in that place. Welcome to Opinions. My name is KG, and joining me today to discuss this very subject and share her opinions on it is Tracy Jacobs. She is a sexologist, but she is also an intimacy coach, and she's hopefully going to be guiding us through this conversation. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you, KG. Thank you. It's lovely to be on your podcast here with you, your show, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you this afternoon.
Awesome. So let's just start at the beginning. I guess that's the only place you can start with something like this, right? Why is it that people or relationships or couples find themselves in this place? What tends to lead us to this place?
Well, KG, there's many issues that the couple will come across in their lifespan together. So there's so many things that they do come across. For example, the birth of children, heaven forbid the divorce, the death of a parent, disease, illness that they may come across, the loss of a job. Immigration is a big one. General life stresses cause a couple to disconnect from each other. Also, couples can experience depression in their lives. There's unresolved issues from their pasts, from their childhood, that tend to rear their heads in the relationship that hasn't actually been dealt with. So there are many issues. You know, when you meet when you're young, you think that you're going to spend the rest of your lives together, happily ever after, and you don't realize that actually life happens.
Yeah.
And you need to tackle a lot of these hardships together. And not all of us have got the skills to deal with these life issues.
You see, that's why we've got you here, because you're going to help us through dealing with those issues. But in terms of identifying, these issues when they start to happen, because I don't think a lot of people are aware that there might be these underlying issues that result in this distance or this lack of intimacy in relationship, right? And often because we're also, I suppose, self-serving, as soon as you see that or feel that your partner is pulling away from you or that there's been a loss in connection, you start to get upset. I suspect that most people will probably get upset first before they start to really interrogate what the issues might be. What signs would one be looking out for? What typically would point to the fact that there might be underlying issues here that's leading to this lack of intimacy?
There will be a disconnect. So the couple will stop talking to each other. They'll stop having sex. They may fall into depression where one of them will not want to get out of bed, won't want to interact socially. Work will suffer. There are lots of issues that will happen. Generally, the couple stop having sex, but that might be an issue that the couple have been battling with from the beginning of the marriage. So there are a lot of components to deal with, to look at really. Generally, an event happens. So the birth of a baby, or the death of a parent, or a health issue, as I said, or financial stress. Those are the common events in a couple's life which create stress and will cause them to disconnect.
I suspect that also with that comes infidelity or conversations around that. I would suspect that also would be a trigger for this sort of separation or this lack of intimacy.
It can, absolutely it can. And the reasons for infidelity are not always so clear. Sometimes you've got one of the partners who have just got an itch, a wandering eye, something that needs to be fulfilled within themselves. It might not be the result of the relationship being bad or at fault. It might be the person who is at fault looking to fulfill a need. It could also be that the relationship is faulty and one of the partners is not getting their needs met. It also could be that, as I say, one of the partners is not getting their needs met, so somebody at work might be fulfilling that need on an emotional level or a physical level or whatever that might be. So infidelity is definitely something that comes up.
I love how you bring up this idea of needs, because I don't know what it is I was reading. I was either reading something or watching something or listening to a podcast. And the conversation around, burdening our partners with our needs came up. And one of the things that was pointed out by the speaker or I suppose the author on whatever it is I was reading or listening to, was that sometimes or at least it's possible rather, that we might be burdening each other because traditionally or historically, relationships weren't necessarily the place where all our needs were supposed to be met. And because the world is what it is, we romanticized everything and we made a story. And in the story, boy meets girl, falls in love with girl, hopefully girl falls back in love with boy. And this person is supposed to be my be all and end all, meet every one of my human needs. And so here we are walking around as these people who are burdened with all of this responsibility and expectation. And unfortunately, we fall short in some respects. So I guess the question I'm asking is it a fair expectation to have that your partner ought to fulfill your, I suppose, erotic needs is that an expectation that ought to be built into romantic relationship? Or is it just something that we've taken on as things have unfolded in society, I guess?
Well, that's quite a heavily laden question, because you ask, is the partner supposed to fulfill our erotic needs?
Yeah.
Well, if you're talking about a traditional marriage, yes. If you're talking about an open marriage, not necessarily. Traditionally, when we lived in communities where our community took care of a lot of our needs, our husbands or our wives didn't necessarily take care of all our needs. We would seek out members of our community to take care of a lot of our needs. And then we would go to our spouses to fulfill our sexual needs.
Mm.
That was traditional in traditional marriages. Then marriages were romanticized, and we kind of put each other on this romantic pedestal, and you must be my everything, and you must fulfill my emotional, physical, sexual, intellectual, spiritual needs. And we then started to rely on our spouses to fulfill all our needs. That became a romantic notion. To a certain extent, we all want that. We all expect that today in modern love. Mm. Whether that's completely possible to achieve, well, that depends on the couple, whether they're able to give it to each other. It is becoming a really big pressure on the couple, as most women have that romantic idea of what love is. Men these days are also getting caught up in this idea of what romantic love is. And we're often looking just to our partners to fulfill every need. And if the truth be told, we should really be looking within ourselves to fulfill all of those needs. And our partners should just be an added extra. So what do I mean by that? We should be fulfilling our own sexual needs through self-pleasure. We should be making sure that we are fulfilling our financial needs. We should be financially independent. We should be relying on ourselves for emotional support and comfort. We should be looking within ourselves to give ourselves emotional love and comfort. We should be intellectually stimulating ourselves, reading newspapers, making sure that we're updated or keeping our hobbies updated. And spiritually, we should be making sure that we're getting our spiritual needs met, talking to a higher power, going to a place of worship, connecting with whatever God or whatever it is that we connect with. Because the truth is that when we become too dependent on another person to fulfill our needs, we lose ourselves in that relationship. And this is a utopia, an ideological connection or relationship. But that is really, in my opinion, where so many relationships fall apart, and especially young relationships, where they look to their partners to fulfill every need that they have. We have to foster within ourselves everything that we need, all resources within ourselves that we need, and then the partner is an added extra to just kind of the cherry on the top, someone we can laugh with, go to movies with, have dinner with, travel with, enjoy more sexual experiences with. It's you know, that is my opinion.
So let's go back, because I love what you're saying about one being able to fulfill their own erotic needs. And before we even go further, maybe what we ought to do is to break down what forms the erotic landscape? And I know it's a very big question to ask, but are there components to Eros? Are there parts to it? And if so, what are those? So if Katlego was thinking about fulfilling his own, I might be thinking about it at a very superficial level, which is that I'm going to self-pleasure, right? But is that the only way that one fulfills their own sort of erotic needs?
So, you know, Eros is a very pie in the sky kind of idea. We talk about Eros, we also associate it with erotic pleasure, or erotica, should I say. And Eros was the Greek god of love and sexual desire and physical desire. And it's the concept that is used to express physical and sexual intimacy between husband and wife. Okay. It's a state of sexual arousal. Right. Now, biblically, this term was used particularly between husband and wife. Nowadays, we know that we can experience eros, sexual desire, a state of sexual arousal, even out of the confines of marriage. Okay. So when we look at achieving such arousal, the question is, do many couples, well, I assume that this is your question, do many couples achieve that? And how sustainable is that? Okay. Is that your question?
That is the question.
Okay. So these factors that come into this question are many. And one of the biggest factors in achieving an erotic relationship is that both partners have to be invested in this relationship. They both have to want to achieve the same thing. So that's first and foremost. And it has to be nurtured through selflessness. Okay? So KG and your fiance, you've both got to be on the same page. There's got to be open communication with honesty, and not too much honesty.
What does that mean?
So you need to be careful not to hurt each other's feelings.
Okay.
In expressing your desires, your fantasies, and your needs.
But I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, but then that means I'm holding back something, isn't it? Am I not supposed to be having a full-on explosion with this partner of mine?
Right. So it entails a dialogue, open communication, and a sensitivity with which you describe your needs.
Okay.
And it's also about hearing what she needs and what she wants with open ears, not to take offense to something that she doesn't like that you're doing. Being open and honest enough to have this exchange of communication. Also, non-verbal cues are very important. A subtle wink, a subtle touch of the arm, a pinch of the bum.
You're talking my language.
A kiss, a passionate kiss, knowing that you are ready to go, that you want to move things to the bedroom, or that you want to engage in something more intimate together. Because sometimes talking can actually be an absolute passion killer. But you have to be reading each other's nonverbal cues. And maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Sometimes couples need to know each other well enough to be able to pick up on each other's nonverbal cues. So how does a young couple who haven't been dating for very long are able to pick up on nonverbal cues? Sometimes the sexual attraction is just so, the chemistry between them is just so that words aren't really needed. You understand?
Yep.
But take the scenario that the two of you are getting sexually intimate, and she moves your hand to another section of her body. That's a nonverbal cue. There doesn't have to be a whole long discussion about what she likes or what she doesn't like. That is enough of a cue for you to know that she likes it this way or that way.
But then, you know what?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just thinking, I'm thinking back to my younger years. Oh, those younger years. And at that time, obviously, you know, you're young, you're in university, or, you know, at that part of one's life, and you meet somebody and there isn't baggage. There isn't, you know, that cue that you're talking about is simple to read because it can only mean one thing: move this way, right? But once you get into an invested relationship and you've kind of been through life's ebbs and flows, it tends to have baggage. So what ought to just be a simple sleight of hand becomes a rejection to KG, and he starts to implode. And he's like, no. What does she mean? She doesn't want to do this anymore. Maybe she does. So I don't even know what the question I was making was, but maybe just, or asking was, I was just trying to figure out if there is a difference between, you know, established relationship and the baggage that comes with it. And maybe we should talk about that. And, you know, relatively new relationships that are in the early stages, and there might not be any sort of background to it as well.
So now you hit on my favorite subject of all, and that's called vulnerability. When you meet for the first time and clothes are being shed at rates per knot, and you hanging from chandeliers and you're doing things that would make porn stars blush, you know, there is no vulnerability.
Yeah, no, there is.
The sexual intimacy is quite shocking, to say the least. You're going places with this woman that you wouldn't go, you're doing things that you wouldn't dream of even telling your best friend. They're so intimate, right?
Yeah.
And why? Because there's no vulnerability there. She doesn't know you. You don't know her. You're just a fling. There's no baggage. You don't know her baggage. She doesn't know your baggage. So it allows you to get it on in the most carnal way, okay? Now you develop feelings for each other and you start dating more seriously, and she meets your mom and you meet her mom, and so you start to get to know each other's baggage. You start unpacking that baggage, and so you start to reveal more and more of yourselves, and you become more and more vulnerable. And there might be a few things that get eyebrows raising. Really? Your family is so-and-so? Oh, your uncle did that? Really? And your sister married that one? And your whatever. Slowly but surely, all the little secrets come out of the boxes, and maybe you start to judge here and there. Vulnerability is scary. Being vulnerable is scary, and it immediately makes us want to put up walls and guard ourselves from being hurt or being judged. And it immediately makes us pull back and not be so willing to engage so openly in relationships. As the relationship grows and grows, the intimacy, the sexual intimacy tends to lessen more and more because the walls are coming up more and more. And now all of a sudden, she's not so happy for you to see her cellulite or a few fat bulges. And you're not so happy either to show parts of your physical self that are starting to show. You're feeling a little bit ashamed about something, or it's not so easy to give yourselves sexually when more of your emotional self is starting to show. So the one gives up on the other, and so on and so forth. Then you get married, you have kids, life happens, it gets busy. And as I say, jobs are lost, stress is involved, financial issues arise, the loss of family members, parents, and so vulnerability becomes an everyday occurrence in this relationship. Vulnerability, the sexual intimacy really has to be fostered and worked on much harder during those times. Sometimes they stop completely, the sexual intimacy. And that's why it's very important that we learn these things, the differences or the similarities, or learn about vulnerability and intimacy at the beginning of our relationships, so that we know that we've got to keep the intimacy going throughout the years and include vulnerability into our relationships continuously, so that we're always showing ourselves vulnerability. We're always taking off our masks. We're always removing our armor to the people that we love and care about, so that there are no walls. We're always.
I love that, because I just had, I guess Oprah calls it an aha moment, right? Because for vulnerability to exist, there must be trust, correct?
Exactly.
So I guess in many ways, that's why you'll find intimacy becomes very difficult after there has been a bridge of that trust through whatever means and form. And sometimes it's not necessarily even amongst the two of us. There might be an external factor that's making the environment less trustworthy, for lack of a better word. I just had that click in my head as you were saying that. I was like, oh, that explains so many things on so many levels. But yeah, because I suppose also that speaks to people with a history of sexual assault, or you know, who have lived through that kind of trauma, because I suspect subconsciously they might not be able to go to that place, or it might be a difficult place for them to go to because they don't fully trust the opposite sex. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. So as hard as it may be, the victim needs to become vulnerable, let down their guard, learn to trust again, make sure that they can trust the person they're with, and then learn, and then experience the intimacy again.
Sure.
So that is very much so part of a healing process. But within a couple, the vulnerability has always, if I'm going to be vulnerable with my spouse, that means I'm going to be willing to show all of who I am all the time, so that the intimacy can be present and can grow all the time. If you're holding back from me what you're really going through, what you're really experiencing, how can there be true intimacy on all levels?
Good question.
Mm.
So what do we say to couples that are already in relationship and their relationships have got some miles behind them? So they've, like I said, maybe they've gone through a lot, and they're finding themselves in this, in a sexual desert, for the lack of a better term, an erotic desert, but they truly, truly love each other. And they want to find their way back to each other, because that part of their relationship is the one part that they're struggling with? How do we help them help each other?
So they have to work on their vulnerability, express their fears, be honest with what scares them beyond anything. It may be the fear of losing that loved one, fear of them leaving them, being left, fear of death, fear of broken trust, anything that is getting in the way of connecting intimately. So that's the first thing. We have to break it down. Where is the fear? Why are they not connecting? Where is the resentment? What is stopping them? What's standing in the way? Is there resentment? Is there anger? Is there a lack of trust? And then let's say that life has just happened and there has just been a disconnect, that life has just become so busy. And now is where I go back to what I was saying earlier. There has to be a mutual consent that the couple want to get back on track. They both want to invest in this relationship of getting their groove back on, and they want to go forward. So now we've got to look at libido. We've got to look at who's more into this than the other. How can we match libido? Where's the disconnect? Then we got to look at things like passion. Where's the passion gone? How can we get it back? Date night is a very good way of getting the couple to look at each other again, to start talking, to start getting vulnerable again. Then there's things like looking into each other's eyes and looking and finding each other again.
Explain that to me. When you say looking into each other's eyes and finding each other again, I feel like there's something more to what you're saying. So
when was the last time that you looked into your fiance's eyes? When did you gaze into her eyes and really looked at her and connected with her soul? Held her hands and looked into her eyes long enough to connect with her soul, and vice versa. When did you sit and just give each other a back tickle? When did you touch each other in a really slow way? A massage, but not just a massage. When did you slowly touch each other and really felt what it feels like to touch each other? When did you hold each other on the sofa? Really hold each other. When did you give her a head massage while she just lay in your lap? You took some oil, you gave her a massage in her head, her face. When did you connect through touch? When did you just laugh together? When did you watch a comedy together and just kill yourselves laughing? How much of your day is spent in your head and hers in her head, and not taking time out to just take a walk, hold hands, just breathe, connect with nature? We've got to slow things down. We've got to be present in the moment. Be present with our partners. That's connection. That's intimacy. What is intimacy? Intimacy is connection. It's not sex. It's not penetration. Intimacy is connection. And then, of course, there are other types of intimacy. Emotional, physical, spiritual, intellectual, and sexual. How we connect on all these different levels. But then there's another very, very important part of erotic energy that I need to talk about, and that is know thyself. And then you can know someone else. And that is through self-pleasure. How many of us consciously touch ourselves and get pleasure from ourselves? How many of us are able to get to be vulnerable with ourselves and go into our own sexual vulnerability? Engaging in self-pleasure, bringing ourselves to orgasm, knowing what we like, knowing what we don't like, knowing what turns us on, so that we can actually engage with our partners on a deeper level, making sexual connections with our partner on such a deeper level. You know, for men, they're quite used to just, you know, jerking off in quite an unconscious manner. But when we've got to now teach men how to self-pleasure in a far more conscious manner, getting in touch with their bodies, women have generally been discouraged from touching their bodies. Sex negative people don't encourage self-pleasure among women at all. So teaching women to self-pleasure is a lot of a slower process. With the physical anatomical differences of our bodies, we need time to get into engage with our bodies sexually. So it is more of a conscious process. So this is a very, very important element to erotic pleasure, that both partners in the relationship engage in self-pleasure as a means to promote eros in the relationship.
I'm looking forward to the next time you and I actually chat, because I'm actually kind of saying that we're going to right now, specifically because I want us to speak and spend a whole hour speaking about just self-pleasure and exploring that as a conversation. It needs that much time. I don't want to leave our conversation though without asking about the importance of play in relationships.
Yes.
I suspect we get to places in relationships where we're so busy doing the managing of the relationship, the operations of the relationship, that we forget to play with each other. And once that happens, I'm speculating here, I can only imagine that something gets lost in that process. Am I way off?
No, in fact, I always say to my clients, imagine you're having an affair with your wife or your husband.
I like that.
Have an affair. That's what you did in the beginning.
Yeah.
You sexted each other. Okay, you know, if you're as old as me, we didn't have cell phones. Man, no, I'm joking. But you know, sext your fiance. Send her beautiful text messages. Tell her to meet you in the bathroom for a quickie, or in the linen cupboard or the pantry for a quickie.
Use not just dick pics. That's not what we're talking about here.
No. Use lubricants for quickies. You know, start getting your head into the sexiness of the day in the morning. Prepare something sexy for the evening, so you're thinking sexy the whole day. Plan surprises, buy lingerie, get her to start thinking about sex early, tease her from the morning, tell her what you want to do to her in the morning, that night, get her ready early in the morning. have an affair with your partner.
I love that.
Meet in different, okay, now we're in lockdown, so meet in different rooms in the house. Or if you've got a 2-bedroom house, like meet in the car for a quickie, you know, go and snog in the car.
But that sounds fun, actually.
It is fun, and there you play. And then you get the sex toys out. And you introduce them slowly if that's something that's foreign and scary. You don't get a huge mother vibrator that is, you know, that you're afraid will eat you. You get something that's small and tasteful and something that's easy to digest. You start watching porn, but porn that is not too vulgar, something that is easy. You can pick nowadays. There's so much available. You don't have to go to hectic, disgusting stuff. You can go to something that's tasteful, something that you both like, you know, and there's a lot that is available out there today. You got to play. Life doesn't have to be so serious. I always say we're here for a good time, not a long time.
Not a long time. I like that. I really, really like that. Okay, let me ask an uncomfortable question then. When should couples give up? When should they just fold it and pack it all up and say, clearly, we just don't have that thing. We don't have that spark.
Gosh, I don't, in my practice, I actually don't. There's one couple I remember saying to, and they weren't married yet. It was a young couple, and he wanted to go and find himself. And I said, you know, through working with them for a really, really long time, and I'm not a long-term therapist, I'm short-term work, we decided that they were going to end the relationship, and they were going to go on their own way to find themselves as individuals. But generally, I can't remember of any couple where we called it quits. Unless, of course, they really hate each other. They can't stand to be around each other, and they give up trying.
So what if the lack of intimacy, and I at least now have the understanding that we're speaking intimacy holistically, it's not just purely physical, is creating resent for either one of the two or both of them. So they're just getting more and more frustrated and feeling like, I really want to be with this person, but I've tried everything and I'm not getting to that place with them.
Yeah, mind you, now that you speak of it, I can think of one or two couples where it has led to such a place where one or the other is just not moving. Well, they either do get divorced or they stay married and just never actually solve the problem. They just stay unhappily married. Because, as I said, if you don't have 100% buy-in from both participants, it can't really work. It can't work at all. Most of the clients that I see are in it to win it. They want it back, or they want to start it up, or they want to. Then you've got to find out what is holding them back. Is it a psychological issue? Is it trauma? Is it childhood stuff? Is it a physiological issue? What is going on? Could be something as small as depression that just needs a psychiatrist, some anti-anxiety medication. So we look at everything.
Well, there you have it. The first of what I hope will be many conversations with Tracy, talking about Eros, erotic energy. This time we're talking about it in the form of, at least talking about how we keep it alive in long-term relationships. But just from this conversation alone, there are so many things I want to talk about. I want to talk about how it is that couples can together enjoy watching pornography. Is it good? Is it not good for them? And if so, what should they be watching together, and how do they manage that whole process? Again, delve into playing. How do we play with each other more as couples? If we are in a relationship where either one of the two or both have had some sort of sexual trauma, how do we go back and try and heal some of that so that we can get to a place where both parties get to enjoy each other? And again, it's not just about enjoying the physical. That's one thing I've learned from this conversation. It's about enjoying the entirety of eroticism, if you would, of connection and of intimacy. And I love that about this. Tracy, thank you so much. Totally Me, tell us about it. Where do we find you? How do we connect with you? How can we get your services?
Okay, so on the web, my web address is www.totallyme.co.za. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is @TotallyMeTracy. And you'll actually find me by my practice name is Tracy Zeman Jacobs. If you search Google also, intimacy coach, intimacy and relationship coach, that's where you'll find me.
Parting shot? Parting
shot. We are here for a good time, not a long time.
I love you, Tracy. We are here for a good time, not a long time.
Absolutely. Sex is beautiful. We should all be having it. We should all be loving it. It should not be a chore. It should be something that we just want more and more and more of. Even self-pleasure. Do it. The more you do it, the more you want it.
Oh my God.
Get ready.
Okay, so you know how it works. The drill is very simple.